Marvel and DC has failed us as fanboys. They failed you. They failed me. They failed they, them, is what you want to hear in this video. And to an extent, it's pretty much true. In my last video, I talked about how fans need to check their nostalgic biases when it comes to speaking about the new wave of Marvel and DC comics that are coming out nowadays, and not let nostalgia blind them from the great books that are actually coming out. To branch out past Marvel and DC and the superhero genre in general and find new books that are coming out that are actually great and amazing, and not just stick to what they know and actually grow with the culture. But with that being said, there are genuine fanboys who have good critiques and actual criticisms of the new books that are coming out. You know, the Wednesday Warriors who actually go out and put their money where their mouth is when it comes to the comic book culture. But wait, there is hope over the horizon for the fanboys who actually tapped in with the indie comics community. And that hope is crowdfunding comics, specifically Kickstarter comics. I like to call these comics grassroots comics, but more on that later. But right now, I want to talk about why Marvel and DC is failing us as fans. Where is the disconnect between these companies and us consumers? In the recent years, the mainstream has not been holding up their part when it comes to the quality of comics. A lot of these newer comics are here and gone like nothing. There are so many problems when it comes to continuity in these comics. People aren't invested in these storylines anymore because one week Spider-Man is dead, the next week he's back and alive. There's so many random crossover events every other month that no one's keeping track of. There aren't any good characters in the mainstream anymore. The last great compelling superhero was made in the 60s, with the exception of... And I love Invincible. I love it. Look at my collection. Look at it. Look at it. The comic companies aren't really putting their best effort forward when it comes to creating new and miraculous comic book superhero characters. But then again, fans aren't really supporting these new characters, even though they gripe and complain about new characters being made. But, you know, I guess that's what it is. On top of that, the mainstream has failed to adopt a better business model when it comes to selling their books. The collector's market is dwindling down. Not everyone has a comic book shop close to their homes. They rarely reprint the trades of their popular comic books in stores, and the access to digital comics is hard to come by. They have also isolated legacy readers in an attempt to bring in a younger crowd, but have failed to do so, and in the process created a group of disgruntled older fan base. The lack of interest in the mainstream of comics is nothing new. Back in the 80s, there was an underground indie black and white comic scene boom that brought characters in comics like the Ninja Turtles, Lady Death, Cerebus, Love and Rockets, and Nexus. Even Matt Groening came out of this new wave with his Life is Hell comic. These creators defected from the mainstream long ago, understanding that mainstream comics was just corporate bullshit and wasn't a place for them to strive in the comics that they want to make. Interesting enough, history has come by and repeated itself with these crowdfunding comics. In my eyes, crowdfunding is the new underground for comics. If you don't know, places like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and the newer Fund My Comic are crowdfunding platforms used by indie creators to help raise capital to help fund their projects. There are superhero comics, bad girl comics, horror, sci-fi, LGBTQ, and so many more genres of comics on these platforms. These spaces help creators build a more direct consumer model, cutting the middleman of having a publisher. Creators will run campaigns on their site for 30 days hoping to reach their monetary goals. Some goals can be as little as $500 and as great as $100K. Either way, the creator needs to hit these financial goals in order to keep the money. To reach these goals, the creators will have rewards in their campaigns with different tier levels with different price values. This is where the comic creator will have their books, merch, and variant covers and such for sale. Kickstarter comics are definitely starting to wedge themselves in the comic book market, to the point where comic pros have used the platform themselves to fund their comics. Creators like Sean Murphy, Neil Gaiman, Todd McFarlane, and more. Even popular indie comics that have came out in the last few years have started off on Kickstarter, such as Berserk and the book that Wesley Snipes did. And today I have a Kickstarter savant of sorts to help me explain his expenses, his process, and his overall experience when it came to crowdfunding comics on Kickstarter. Tyler Carpenter. Tyler is a successful comic creator who's ran and fully funded a dozen Kickstarter campaigns. He also has a YouTube channel, Draw and Talk, where he talks about manga and comics. But the real gems of his channel come from his live streams, where he gives a lot of game to up and coming indie creators on how to make money and market comics in this indie space. So how did you find Kickstarter, and how long have you used it, and how was your experiences using the platform been for you?
Yeah, so in I started doing comics like seriously in 2015, and a lot of the avenue that creators were going was going on Kickstarter, but it wasn't like very like big or popular. Like not a lot of people were talking about it.
Mhm.
And definitely wasn't something that I was thinking about. Like I was like, I need to get a publisher, blah blah. And that was kind of the route that I took. And then some of my friends started doing Kickstarters, and they would make like $1,000 or $2,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, like look at these guys freaking go making $1,000, $2,000. Eventually the publisher that I was with folded, and I was like, crap, I need to make my own fan base. And so let me just use Kickstarter, because I have all these comics that are just sitting here now. I need to do something with them.
Yeah.
And so so then I jumped into the Kickstarter world. I did one Kickstarter, and then everyone decided that Indiegogo was the place to go to. So then I went over to Indiegogo, and then after 2 Indiegogos, it was okay, we're all going back to Kickstarter. So then I went back to Kickstarter. I did one crowdfund on Kickstarter that funded like in 3 hours. It was super popular. And within 4 days, I had this mental breakdown. I hated the book. And I was like, if I finish this campaign, I finish the book, they're to be continued, and I'm going to have to give them this book. So I basically cut off crowdfunding. I said, I'm never going to do this again. I'm taking a year off. And then I came back like 5 months later to crowdfunding with the new property, and it did really well. And I've just been utilizing it ever since.
Okay, yeah, that crowdfunding you're talking about was the chef's book, right?
Yes.
I heard you talk about it.
Well, you've done your research.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I've been watching, man. I've watched all your streams.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, it was the chef's book. It was like I still to this day get people going, one chefs. I'm like, never. I hate that series. I made a new chef's book.
Yeah.
And it's just in my hard drive because I'm like, I hate this series.
Rainy day, maybe one day. Why do you think people gravitate more do you think there's more creators on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and why do you think people like it more? I mean, for me, I've only backed Kickstarter projects. I haven't even I've used Indiegogo, I've seen it, I've been on there, but I don't really like the way the website's like formatted and stuff, and like it just doesn't seem very like user friendly. And like Kickstarter is like a lot more like pristine, clean. It's easier to function through it and stuff like that. And it seems like a lot of the creators that I follow are on Kickstarter. So like, what do you think? Why do people gravitate towards more Kickstarter than Indiegogo?
Kickstarter just has a better name brand. I mean, I'll try to like ignore some of like the political biases that come with both platforms, but I will say that Kickstarter just as a whole has a better brand. So for example, let's say I can go on Indiegogo, and this was kind of like a big turning point for people. I can go to Indiegogo, do a campaign, and then it can fund, and then I don't have to deliver the book, and I can still open up another project. I can open multiple. And so there were a lot of readers and backers who were like, man, like this person has like 5 projects that are kind of live, or they're funded and have any of my stuff. Whereas Kickstarter, you can't pull that. You can't pull that crap on your profile, because if you can take the money and run, but Kickstarter won't let you start another project unless on the same account, unless you have fulfilled. Like for my current campaign, I tried starting it before I'd finished fulfilling it, and they're like, hey, knock it off. And I'm like, well, I already did this. Like I already fulfilled it. And they went, oh, sorry, we didn't see that, blah, blah, blah. But they will shut you down. And so I think just it's a place where customers and consumers just feel a little safer.
The more comfortable with it.
The more comfortable going. I'll be honest. I wish that consumers and like especially indie comics readers would be okay with going to creators' personal websites. Like I wish that they would personally do that. But for some reason, like Kickstarter is just like that's right now the hub for buying indie. Like. Yeah, it's the hub for buying indie comics. And so I mean, I don't even need to crowdfund my books. Like I use it as a pre-order system, but I just know eyes are on Kickstarter, so that's why I use Kickstarter.
Even though Kickstarter is a great way to support the comic book creator you know and love directly, there is a chance you could get screwed over by either of these creators taking the money you put towards their campaign and running with it, or not producing the comic in time that was promised. Interesting enough, Kickstarter does have a clause in their guidelines stating that you are not guaranteed the reward that you have pledged for. How do you feel about, like, speaking of pros, like actually going on to the platform? Like I just seen Sean Gordon Murphy, I think.
Murphy.
He did the Zorro book and made like 100K in like 10 seconds. And then there's like these other platforms who like they'll get like old art from like pro artists and make like little like art books out of them and selling on stuff like that. So how do you feel about
you had a Berserk
Yeah,
It did
yeah,
like
Berserk,
over a
the
million
Wesley
with
Snipes
Keanu Reeves.
book, all
Yeah.
those stuff. So like, how do you feel about like these like little small publishers using the platform to like crowdfund? Do you feel like the platformers should be strictly like indies or all creatives, or like how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll say when Berserk came out with Keanu Reeves, I did make a video saying like I don't think that this is right. Like
Mhm.
I was very apprehensive about it. The great thing about having conversations like, like with what we're having is that
Yeah.
if someone can give a good opinion through these conversations, it's possible that someone can change their mind. And what happened was I went on a stream with a bunch of other creators and I was kind of in the camp of like they shouldn't be on
Mhm.
here. And then another creator was, oh, it's okay. And they presented a really good argument and it made me go, okay, delete the video. And the argument that it was it's so hard for consumers to want to put their credit card information out somewhere. So the fact that like let's say so like for example Sean Gordon Murphy, he brings over his fan base. Now that
Yeah.
person has a Kickstarter account. When they back Sean's book, there is a slight chance that they could back other people's books, but at least they're in the
Yeah.
ecosystem of Kickstarter and
Mhm.
they understand how Kickstarter works. So just the fact that this bigger person was able to get someone onto the platform, sign up, make an account, and help them understand the platform, it means that if they ever run across you or your project, it won't be like this. You get to skip all the education of how to use Kickstarter. They've already done it before.
Yeah, they'll be
And
comfortable and stuff with it and using it and
exactly.
stuff.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, at first I was very apprehensive, and then I was like, no, this is fine. This is totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings like more eyes to the platform. It might have like a trickle down effect and stuff like
Makes
that.
it more
So,
legitimate. It makes it
mhm.
more like not just like, oh, it's this
Yeah.
place where you can get like indie products, but you can also get
Yeah.
like very established professional stuff.
Mhm.
And then it's kind of like the comic book shelf where it's basically like, hey, my book, like I have a crowdfund right now. Technically, my book is right next to Sean Gordon Murphy's if this was like a
Yeah,
comic
yeah.
book shelf. And so it's just a place for you to get eyes.
Yeah, it's definitely like a good thing because it will like help build the platform up, more established people that go on there and they see, oh, this guy who I've been buying from DC all this time, now he has his own book and now he's using it to do this and that. As long as they deliver, it will help build up the platform for
That's the
sure.
thing
Yeah.
is they have to deliver. Like if a bigger creator does go on there, they need to respect like the ecosystem of that platform. And what happened with Indiegogo is the bigger creators burned all the goodwill of the backers by having all these late books. One of the books that I backed, it was my very first Indiegogo book. By the time that I got the book in my hands, I had lived in two houses, bought a house, got my wife pregnant, went through pregnancy, gave birth, and had a
That's
2-year-old
crazy.
child.
Yeah, that's
And
wild.
then I remember going into Walmart and seeing the book
Oh my
and
goodness.
going, wait a second, why how is this book here but not in my hands? And then
That's
you go and they
crazy.
go, just let you guys know we got a Walmart deal and then you're gonna get your book. And I was like,
Nah,
no, you
never
can't
again.
do that, never again. And so yeah,
Yeah.
if these bigger, I say it's great if a bigger creator comes onto these platforms, but they have to respect the ecosystem of those platforms.
Yeah, because you lose the trust of your customers, then it's over with, and then you just mess
Yeah,
it up for everybody else, pretty much. Yeah, I've
exactly.
definitely haven't packed. There's some Kickstarters that I wanted to back, but then I saw like the wait time was like a year or something like that. I'm just like, there's no way. Like, I feel like you need to have your book at least like halfway done or pretty much done before you go on there, like as like a pre-ordering system, kind of like how you do it. But I guess it just depends on how people want to
If
run
I
their
mean,
stuff.
here's the thing, like at its core, Kickstarter is a platform where it's like, hey, I have an idea and I need the money to make it happen. So if the dates is like a year ahead, if anything, I actually like that because it
Hmm.
means that the person's like, okay, like I'm giving myself a year.
Yeah.
Whereas I hate it when they're like, you'll have your book in 2 months. And then then I'm at that year point and I'm like, now where's my book? So it's all about like how you set the expectations
Yeah. Yeah.
for the backers. Like I've never had a late book. I'm looking at the dates right now. I'm this close to getting a late. If I don't, I have like 500 books right there. If I don't send them out by Monday, then I have a late book. But I have
Yeah.
yet to have a late book. And it's because I'm so married on the fact that I told customers that they will have this book in their hand by this date.
Hmm.
And if I don't get that to them, they don't trust me.
Yeah, you got to keep that customer integrity with them. So how's that? How do you like when you like start a campaign, go through the process of like doing the campaign and fulfilling the orders? Like how does that work for you? Like your process, like how are the feelings of like starting your campaign, going through it, and then like all the labor after the fact? Like how is that for you?
Anxiety, want to kill
Yeah.
myself. Yeah, I think at this point I'm kind of used to starting a campaign. Like I think what I've learned, and this is kind of different for everyone, you're gonna get the backer graphs for basically like every comic book campaign is a smile,
Mhm.
and you're gonna see the most people, all of your marketing that you've been doing is going to come within the first 3 days. And then all the marketing that you've been doing throughout the next 30 days will come in the last 30 days, in the last 3 days.
That's crazy.
So that's
Yeah.
why it's that smile. So you're gonna see a big hit, and then you're gonna see a massive slump. We call it the dead area, and then you're gonna see you hope you see a good final like 2-3 day spike. So like once like when it's your first time, you're just like every single day you're refreshing. I'll be honest, I have a campaign going on right now. I have no idea what it's at. I haven't looked
Mhm.
at it in 2 days. For all I know, it's doing terrible. But I'm just kind of used to this fact of I did what I need to do. The first 3 days were it is what it is. Now we'll let it slide for like until it's done, and then we'll put out some pump. Well, then we'll see what it does the next 3 days. In terms of fulfilling, it's just time management. I think for this last one, I was kind of really bad with my time management, and so it's really just communication with your artists, communication with your printers, and making sure that okay, if I need to get everything in my basement, all the product by this date, because then it's going to take me this many days to bag and board the books, and then it's going to take me this many days to ship out these packages, and then it's going to cost this much. And so a lot of times it just comes with experience. Like this is like my 12th campaign I've
Yeah.
done. I know the system that works for me and how to do it, but I'll tell you, like my first campaign, I think my first campaign trying to fulfill those first 50 orders, which is
Yeah.
all I got, was harder than me fulfilling like 400 a couple weeks ago,
Yeah, that's
just because
crazy.
I was like, man, this now it's just a
Yeah,
piece of
you already
cake.
got your process already down and stuff like that. It's not like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, I used to sell like comics on Facebook, and I would like sell like one or two every week, and I'm like, dude, this is a fucking hassle. Like trying to like sell them, and I would like every time I would get like a book, because I would buy books off eBay, and I would like just keep the Gemini things myself.
Oh
Like
yeah,
in my
yeah.
closet, I have a bunch of just like reusable ones. I'm just gonna reuse every time I want to
There
sell
you
some books,
go.
but
Yeah, I always tell people, I'm like, man, if you buy from my store, like, you're gonna get your book late. I think it says that on my store, like, hey, thanks for buying it. You're gonna get your book late because for some reason fulfilling this one order is just so stressful
yeah.
to me.
That's funny. So, do you feel like crowdfunding comics and like Kickstarter comics, stuff like that, are like the new like wave and for like indie books and stuff like that? Do you feel like a lot more people are curating towards that? Do you feel like that is the future for like indie comics as opposed to people just going to the presses themselves and like going to cons and just like, shuffling them out at conventions and stuff like that? Do you feel like people are more
Well,
curated
I
towards?
think they're gonna do both. I think no matter
Hmm.
what, they're gonna do both. I mean, this is just more an online strategy.
Yeah.
I'll say this, and this isn't gonna make me any friends with any of my creators, but I don't like them anyways.
Yeah.
Is I actually hope that it gets to a point where crowdfunding isn't a thing. I wish that there wasn't all these eyes on Kickstarter, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's someone who's like, I've made like 70K this year off Kickstarter, that's me saying that because I think it's almost like a crutch. Like it's a crutch, and a lot of creators don't really understand the platform.
Hmm.
For example, like I always try to use this analogy, and no one gets this. What sells at Target isn't going to sell at Walmart. You can't, and then similarly, you can't sell a taco at McDonald's.
Yeah.
They want hamburgers, and I think what people fail to realize that Kickstarter is its own kind of like platform that has a certain type of book that they want. And so I see a
Hmm.
lot of creators thinking, oh, if I go on Kickstarter, there's a chance that I'm going to hit these massive numbers. And most of the time, and then they never do. And it's just because like not all genres do well on Kickstarter, and it's because they're bringing a taco to McDonald's.
Yeah.
What did I say? I said this about my current book. I said if Kickstarter is Del Taco, my book is the Double Del Cheeseburger,
Hmm.
where it doesn't really fit people are buying it, but it's the worst item at Del Taco.
Yeah.
But and so like, yeah, I had some people go, Tyler, how come, my last book did 17,000, the book before that did over 20,000, and this book I think hasn't even broke 3,000. And a lot of people are like, oh, how come, like, you must be struggling. And I already knew that it was going to struggle because
of the genre of the book.
It's a genre that most Kickstarter backers don't want to read. And so I already knew that. And not just that, it's a genre that my audience that I've cultivated for the last 5 years doesn't read.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say this is the double Del cheeseburger. Like, I threw it on, it's on the menu. It's the worst one in the menu, but it's still my favorite.
Yeah.
And I still want to make it. So I think creators just need to realize, like, hey, is your book the top tier menu item on this platform, or is it the double Del cheeseburger? Because you can like the double Del cheeseburger, but it doesn't change the fact that it's still the worst item on the menu.
Yeah. So what do you think are like the top genres on Kickstarter? And like, since you said your book isn't like a particular like favorite on that platform, why do you still think it's still crowdfunded and met its goals?
So the reason why it met its goals is just because I do have an audience. So I'm not getting really any new backers. Let's say I have a pool of 100 people. All 100 of those people, there's in the Venn diagram, their similar interest is the books that I make, which is like anime girl books, like just anime themes with a female main character. That's like the middle of the Venn diagram. But some of those people clearly are in other areas of the Venn diagram, like crime noir books. And that's where, and then, it's a tiny subset. So that's why they're backing it. In terms of what books do well on Kickstarter, I mean, it sounds awful, but it's actually really hard to say right now. What people think, I'll tell you this: what people think does well on Kickstarter is titties.
Yeah,
like what people think does well on Kickstarter is titties, but it's actually a lot more than that. So a lot of people think, oh, if I put boobs on my cover or have a character who just shows off her boobs, I'm gonna make a lot of money. But if there's a lot of other factors that are involved with it. Some of it's, how is the campaign page laid out? What's the story? Like the boobs might get the person to click on the profile, but then everything else has to be in place. Does the Kickstarter page look good? What's the price of the book? What are the different covers? Who are the artists on these covers? What's the interior pages look like? And so, like, boobs can get someone to click on your campaign.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna always sell the book. There's like, that's just like one aspect of it. Yeah. So I think that's what people are thinking.
Assuming,
but Kickstarter, like, but there's a whole lot more.
Yeah, it's kind of like having a good thumbnail and a good title, but then once they click on your video,
it's like YouTube.
It's
like I try to tell people, like, what's the name of your comic? Because it's got to be good, like a title, and then what is the? I'll tell you this. This is so jacked up. So when I do, we'll just grab it, for example. So the Kickstarter thumbnail is super important because that's kind of like the first experience. And so because I'm a kind of Kickstarter first creator, so if this was like my comic that I'm kickstarting, I have on Clip Studio a rectangle size of what the Kickstarter thumbnail size would be, and I put it on my covers when I'm drawing them to make sure it will look good on the Kickstarter thumbnail. And if I can't fit all the good stuff in that little rectangle, I redo the cover because I've got to be able to translate what I'm doing on the cover in just that like YouTube thumbnail size.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Thing. Yeah.
A lot of your streams I watched in the past, even though you blocked a lot of them, unlisted a lot of them. You leave a lot of advice and stuff like that, like business, advice, a lot of advice of like how you should run your campaigns, or just kind of like what creators should do and look out for and stuff like that. So what are some tips that you kind of like when you go for your campaigns and stuff like that you want to give to like indie creators who are trying to like hop on the platform? What do you think works for them, and stuff like that? Like,
I think the biggest advice that I can give anyone when it comes to on Kickstarter is like, what's your goal, not financially, but just like, what's your goal for the platform? And then when it comes to monetary goals, what are your expectations? So like for example, like the goals on all of my campaigns are $500. I don't need to like fund it. That being said, and that's also because like I typically draw my book, so I don't need the money. Like I just did it, through the kindness of my heart. But if if you were a creator and your book costs $10,000 to make, putting a funding goal at 500 is idiotic. Like you need that 10,000 to make your funding goal at 10,000. So that's where the goals and expectations come in. So what's the goal of this? So the goal for me when I do Kickstarters is this is just a launching platform for my book into the, like, this is the going to the doctor and giving birth to my book. This is stage 1 of launching my book. After that, it's going to go on Amazon, my Shopify store, and I'm going to pump it out other places. But this is like the very first beginning of it. And that's the goal of it. So when people go, "Oh, Tyler, you didn't make as much money," I go, that wasn't the goal for a lot of these books. Like for this one, especially, this wasn't the goal. The goal was just to make a new book so that I could launch it other places. It just so happened I chose step 1 to be Kickstarter. And then in terms of like monetary, that's the interesting one, because so I have a friend and he's setting his, I looked at his Kickstarter campaign and I know he needs money. He needs to make money off of this, both like one to make the next book, but then also like for like life. And his goal is $500. And I'm like, okay, like you'll fund, I know you're going to fund, but what's your expectation? Like, what are you actually hoping to get? Because that's important. Because if it's like, I want 10,000, it's like, okay, what are you doing to get 10,000? Let's talk about that. So knowing what your goal is important, because that's what's going to keep you sane. And then setting what your actual monetary expectations are of the book is how you're going to prepare your marketing strategy for it. If someone tells me, they go, "I'm doing a crime noir book and I'm going to make $10,000, I just go, please don't. I just go, please don't, because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And if it does, like, it's going to be a miracle. Like this is a miracle child. I think another advice is I would say for every creator who's interested in doing Kickstarter, Google Kickstarter stats. And then Kickstarter has this running like spreadsheet on their website of all the categories and successful and unsuccessful. So if you do a Kickstarter in the comics category, there's a 61% chance that you will succeed. All right. So you already have a 60% chance. Then it tells you, it breaks it down by how much money people make. 80% of people, I think it's closer to 85% of people do $1,000 to $9,000. That's where 85% of people are. And so if you're like, I'm going to make 10,000, it's like, okay, chill. Do realize that the 10,000 people are like 10% or like the next 10%.
Yeah.
And if someone goes, I'm going to make 100,000, I'm like, okay, that's 1%. Those are the 1% people. And then surprisingly, there's like, I think 10% of it is 0 to 1,000. So it's actually very small. Like you do have a really good chance of being in the 1 to 9,000 range. But it's just like, you just need to know your expectations. Like if someone goes, I'm going to make $10,000, it's like, okay, well, buddy, 85% of people don't make $10,000 on Kickstarter. So what makes your project so special? What makes your strategy so special that this is going to happen?
Yeah, for sure. People should need to subvert their expectations, especially like if you're only using like Kickstarter, you don't have much of a following or anything else. You need to like know what you're putting yourself in for. You know? I feel like a lot of people think that just because their artwork is good or they think their story is super great that they're gonna make all the money, when it's like,
for sure,
nobody's gonna care.
Some of the best books on Kickstarter, I'm sure, don't like break $1,000, and it's sad. It sucks. But that's just the way it is.
The last question, the biggest fault with like the big two specifically, or like just the mainstream comics, and like why people are starting to curate slowly towards like crowdfunding and more indie stuff.
Yeah, for me personally, as someone who does marketing, the big two in my eyes has lost its way on understanding who their actual customers are. And so, and I get they're trying to bring in a younger audience. They're trying to bring in a more diverse audience. Which is totally fine, but it can't come at the cost of your lifetime legacy fans. And instead of going, hey, lifetime legacy fans, here's your books, and then we're going to make these new books on the side, blah, blah. Like, you still got yours, but we're going to make this new line. Instead, they went, hey, everything that you guys have loved for the last 70 years, we're changing it all.
Yeah.
And they're like, what does that mean? They go, well, Green Lantern's gay now. Robin's gay. Everyone's gay, apparently. There's 7% of gay people in America, but 90% of the DC universe is gay. There's nothing wrong with having that representation, but when you change what fans have known for the last like 70 years, they feel like they're getting shit on. Yeah. And then they feel hurt, and then they stop buying the new stuff. So then the sales go down, and then they leave. And the mainstream companies. And so what Kickstarter is doing is we're seeing the 30 to 40-year-olds and up who are feeling disenfranchised from the Marvel and DC are coming over to the indie side for the Kickstarters. What we're not seeing though still is the younger people. Because they're not buying DC and Marvel still. So their tactic to get all the younger people didn't work. They kicked off all of the older people. And so the younger people are still where they're at, which is reading webtoons and manga. And so I think what Kickstarter is doing right now is it's helping the disenfranchised readers get something new, something fresh. And I think an opportunity that creators like you and me have, and honestly an opportunity that the Marvel and DC would be way better at doing because they've got the money and the resources to do it, is, you know, starting some more digital, like investing in some more digital first stuff, investing in more, like, honestly, like, invest in some more like animated shows. Like I watched Jujutsu Kaisen.
I was just gonna say that.
I watched Jujutsu Kaisen and I go, that's cool, and then I read it. But if I watch any Marvel or DC property, I can't find the comic that it was from because it's a shell of what it was.
Definitely inspired. Like I feel like it's like a formatting issue, like with them, because they have a lot of these characters and they could definitely just go back and rehash like all their old like stories. It's kind of like what they do with the movies and just kind of like, you know, twist it up for like modern time. It's just like, I feel like Shonen Jump, like they have their app, right? And it's like so accessible, so you know, great, and like, you know, you can go to, it's free. Then the latest chapters, first 3 chapters are free, and in between, you know, you gotta pay for it, but whatever. But like I feel like Marvel DC, they don't have, it's just that they're owned. I think it's because they're owned by so many, like these corporations have their hands in their fucking pockets. It's like they can't really do what they want, or like they have to like run it by their fucking, you know, their daddy or whatever.
Like, what's our shareholders gonna think? And it's not, they're not thinking, oh, if we don't do something right now. I mean, Dan Didio said it right before he got fired from DC, but he said we ignored 2 or 3 generations, and we're gonna start feeling it, and they're gonna feel it now. I at this point, I mean, I pulled out a physical comic book, but like 80% of what I read is on my phone. And if I can't get it on my phone within like 3 taps, I'm not going to read it. I can't tell you how to get a Marvel or DC book app. I don't even know where to get it, but I know exactly where to find webtoons. I know exactly where to get Shonen Jump or Manga Plus or any of those, and I can read it within 2 seconds, have a silly goose time, and then boom, bada bing, bada boom, I'm out. Even Global Comics, which is a new app, is getting now Image and Boom and Dark Horse titles in there, and I've been now getting back into comic books because they're now on my phone, and it's only a matter of time, hopefully, where Marvel and DC like jump in on that.
They should,
but they're not catering. So Marvel and DC, long story short, are not catering to the old fan base, and so that old fan base is going to Kickstarter. They're not catering to the new fan base because they don't care, and the new fan base is still, you know, webtoons and manga.
Because like you said, like all these animes are coming out, and this were like a lot of people's first impression for manga. I mean, for like anime culture is coming from. They see the anime, and then if they don't want to wait for the next season to come out 2 years later, they're like, "Fuck that! I'm just gonna go read the manga and stuff like that." And I mean, back in the early 2000s, like they had all those Justice League animated, Unlimited, Static Shock Show, Batman animes. Just like those, I'm pretty sure helped bring, like, I mean, for me, that's helped me like start like getting into those characters. Even if I didn't read the comics, it's like years later, I was like, oh, I kind of know about this, whatever.
Well, I mean, they get you in the characters. They get you in the characters, but the problem is that what anime and manga does, anime adapts the story like almost 1 for 1, whereas you can watch the latest Hawkeye television show and they're like, it was inspired by Matt Fraction and David Aja's Marvel run. And then you go buy the book and you go, it's so different. So no, I can't. Same thing with, like, I mean, the DC animated series, TV series were amazing. And yet you're not going to find any of that stuff in the comics. Like what anime does is it always points back to you buying the book. In the shows, none of the stuff that Marvel and DC have done the last 10 years has ever pointed back to the books.
They don't want to pay them royalties.
Did you watch Pokemon the first? Do you remember going to the theaters? I'm assuming we're close to the same age. And you would go see a Pokemon movie, and they give you a Pokemon card. I don't know if you.
Nah. Well, I think man, I remember watching Pokemon 2000, but I think I watched like on VHS at home. I was
Okay,
definitely
okay.
like younger whenever those movies came out, so I definitely watched them like on Cartoon Network or
Pokemon
whatever.
2000. Okay,
Yeah,
so
that was my favorite one.
when
for sure.
Pokemon the first movie and Pokemon 2000 came out in the theaters, you got a Pokemon card in the theater.
Mhm.
Which obviously when a kid sees this, they're like, oh, and then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
force their mom to buy them a Pokemon cards. It is like shocking to me that in the last 10 years of Marvel's rise in entertainment, that none of the tickets were like, go to your local comic shop and get 10% off of a graphic novel.
Yeah, I know that
Like
would be
what a
like
wasted
super smart,
opportunity.
yeah.
What a wasted
Yeah,
opportunity.
they think like what their incentives is like, oh, we're gonna make all these like 30 different variant covers and da 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 da. It's like they also don't realize. I feel like the collectors market is dying. Like not a lot of people there's not a lot of collectors anymore. And all the collectors were like the older crowd
Yes.
that are like out. Like I'm probably like one of the youngest people that I know that collect comics. Like, and I have like 5 long boxes in my closet right now. I'm just like I'm
And even you're like,
shit.
what am I doing with this?
Yeah, like what am I buying all these comics for? Like
the
fuck.
collector's market, it's crazy because comics cater. Let's say there's 1,000 let's say there's 1,000 comic book readers, and out of those 1,000, 100 of them are collectors. It's crazy that DC and Marvel cater their whole business around 100 people and ignore the other 900. But that's what they do, and it's like, you can make $1,000 with 100 people paying $10 each, or you can make $1,000 and have everyone pay $1. But now you have more people. Now you have a bigger pool to play with, and now the industry can survive a little bit longer with these 1,000 people versus you're only catering to 100 people. Because then those 900 people are like, well, if you're not going to give me what I want, I'm going to go read manga and webtoons.
Yeah, and I feel like another weird thing is that people only want to look at Marvel and DC and never want to go to like an Image or like a Boom or something like that. Like it's just so weird how people are like that. But I don't know, because I don't even like, I don't fucking read. I only read Marvel and DC if one of my favorite artists are doing a run. Like if like Danny Warren Johnson or like somebody like that is like doing a run on a character that I like I wouldn't care about the character. I just want to see their art because I'm like a art first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're following like, for me, it's like if Greg Capullo does something, I'm like, okay, what are you freaking drawing? But yeah, like most of like this stack right here is just like that. You can't even see it. Like this is just Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. But then like, like that's all Batman up there. But then the next row is all Image. The next one is 5 Marvel, and the rest are Image. And then the bottom row, the bottom 2 rows are just indie.
I just got boxes. Just like I have like a bunch of like I said, Danny Warren Johnson. I started like Ed McGuinness, a bunch of like artists that I like really like. Art Adams, like artists that I really like that I'm like trying to inspire my art towards. That I kind of read their shit and like recently I've been trying to get rid of a lot of my shit because I'm like, why the fuck did I buy this? Like I don't even like.
No, it's crazy. Like I see, I remember going to someone's house and they were a huge collector. And I was like, wow, you have a really cool comic book collection. I just saw like 3 long boxes. They go, oh no, come to my garage. And they had like those warehouse shelves. They had like 5 of them, and there was like hundreds of long boxes. I'm like, what are you gonna do with these? I'm gonna sell them. And I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah, I know. I dread that. I went to this one guy's house because I go on Facebook Marketplace a lot too to buy like comics. So like you get like really good deals on there because people would just like are just trying to get rid of the shit. And I went to this one old dude's house, and he's probably like in his 80s, and he's been collecting since he was like 6 or 7. So like he's been since like the golden age of comics. And he said he has like a garage of just old comics and stuff like that. I'm like, bro, I would never. And my wife would kill me if I was doing some shit like if I had like hundreds of boxes. But so to wrap this whole entire video up, we as creators, comic book creators, we should take advantage and utilize these crowdfunding platforms. This is your chance to make that dream comic you've always wanted. These crowdfunding platforms are here to help us get the funding to make these comics that we always wanted to make. But with doing that as a creator, you have to learn how to market your books. You have to learn how to read analytics and learn how to find a crowd that will come to your books. Just because you put your books on Kickstarter or on these platforms doesn't mean that it's going to be fully funded. So you do need to learn how to market. You do need to learn how to produce, not just when it comes to making these comics, but producing these Instagram reels, these TikToks, these YouTube videos and stuff like that to help bring an audience to your book. So whenever you do put that Kickstarter out, you can make the money you want. As comic book fans, this is your chance to help the creator that you love and know fund their comic and make their comic. This is also a chance for you to explore outside of the mainstream Marvel and DC who has been failing us these last couple years and find a new comic book that you will love. Find a new creator that you will appreciate. Find a new series that you want to follow up with. Crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, all these platforms are awesome. They're great. It's just up to you, us as the consumer, us as the creators to do what's right by making these platforms and help bring these platforms up and not let them fall by the wayside, and not just rely on Marvel and DC to entertain us anymore if that's not what they've been doing these last couple of years. I also want to say a big thanks to Tyler for, you know, giving me his input. He's so knowledgeable. You guys need to go check out his channel, especially if you are a creator. Like I said, in his live streams, he does a lot of good. He gives you a lot of gems and stuff like that. I've been watching him for the last year or so, and you know, I've learned a lot just from watching his videos and learning more about Kickstarter and stuff like that. I definitely am planning to do my own Kickstarter probably next year, so hopefully you guys, you know, will stick around and help me with that. Yeah, with that being said, I appreciate you guys watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.